Hello. I was like, all right, is this working? My internet was acting crazy last night, boy. It's like, don't you start with me. Keep the vibration up. You know, when you're going through stuff, and I am, and you're trying to talk about law of vibration, you better be your own best example. So I am here. I am committed and consistent. And I am actually very happy to be here. This is the thing when you're going through things, make sure that you are doing other things, right? Replace a thought, the uncomfortable thoughts, with your current thoughts, with the current positive aspects of your life and what is going on. So let me see. The usual. Okay, so I am on Turner's Church, and I am putting up my usual. I was reading, I thought that was going to be a message, had to do with the today, but no, it's not. So we're on day 12. Let me pick up my voice and pick up start moving, making the momentum, changing the momentum, stuff like that. So we are now live. Join us. As usual. I don't even put down the links anymore because people needing to read the message. So hopefully this helps them to read the event and what it says and stuff like that. So, inviting people to come on board. Had my two homies riding with me, Kim and Dina, and supporting and things like that. Maybe they'll pop in, maybe they won't, but it is okay because I am here and I will continue to hold it down and, throw some support both our ways, because I certainly appreciate them getting on board with me from the beginning. So we are actually on day 12, and they are not necessarily, they're kind of sort of starting something new on the Bubbles and the Bears channel with Javon and Chris. And I saw it, but I didn't get into it again. As I said, today it'll start kind of being sporadic. Like, I will watch it. I have some work to do. Today is actually a little bit of a busy day, so I have some work to do after this, and I will be having it playing in the background so that I can watch it. But I saw Chris was doing something with regards to the total woman, and Javon was actually doing something addressing men, and I thought that was really good too. I wanted to give my opinion in terms of some of the context, because that is definitely where he and I go in like opposite directions. And of course, that probably would be the case because I'm a single woman and he's a married man, and and we have very different takes and perspectives on things. But I will share my perspective. First and foremost being, I love men. I have like top 10 people you love most on the planet, and 4 of them are men. My 2 brothers and my 2 youngest nephews. I love everybody, not putting them in categories, but those are the people I think about the most in terms of good, decent men that I certainly support and would continue to wish for that in general for Black men. We know they have their ups and downs and their problems. We all do. So one of the things I was thinking too, now that I'm kind of off of the 21 days of horny cycle, I see a little speck on my glasses, is that depending on if people are on with me or not, then I will shorten these things up, go a little longer, go a little shorter. When people start clicking on the channel and see, dang, she got all these hour-and-a-half videos. I know how I am looking at other people's YouTube channels. As soon as I even see that, I'm like, I ain't listening to all of that unless I'm like doing things like cleaning the house or I'm doing things in the kitchen and stuff where I can just play it in the background. It's not too many videos that I want to watch an hour and a half. So no sense in being hypocritical about it when you're making 1 hour-and-a-half videos and understanding that people ain't going to sit through all of that. Sometimes obviously when people kind of attracted to what you're saying, if you have it in a kind of a radio format, situation, these days, radio podcast kind of situation. People kind of will sit through it and treat it like it's a daily show. But we have come to the point in our lives where we are the kind of a little bit more immediate gratification and conditioning, brainwashing, and programming that has kind of gotten us to the point in the place where we have short attention spans and are just not really wanting to sit through things that are long-winded and things like that. So with that being said, as I said, I didn't watch theirs, but I will watch it later. And some of the things that I wanted to talk about today was just law of vibration and law of attraction, and just having a better understanding of it. A lot of people got their introduction to the law of attraction via The Secret. If you have not seen the movie, if you have not read the book, if you have not listened to the CDs, I have all 3 of them on my bookshelf because I was gangster with it because it really spoke to me at the time. I would certainly recommend it. It's now like, I don't know, what is it, 10 years old or older from when it first came out. It's probably older than that. But it's still very pertinent. And the biggest thing, surprisingly at the time, I wasn't even liking it as much for myself as I was for children, because I can remember when I was younger and just having this really vivid imagination and embracing, all of these possibilities. And of course, adults not knowing any better, they'll start telling you, stop daydreaming, stop daydreaming. And eventually what happens? You stop daydreaming. And, and it's actually that kind of thing when you have that vivid imagination. But then with Black people, and we need to start acknowledging for ourselves, because nobody else is going to do it, that we have been victimized. We have been victimized by oppressors and enslavers. And we may be far removed from that, as they like to try to get us to say. We all know that the effects of slavery and the systems with an S of racism have impacted and affected and infected and effected our lives, all 3 effects, our lives. And therefore, we need to kind of acknowledge that. No, we don't want it to be a crutch. We don't need it, we don't need to cling on to myself or anybody in terms of some cult guru, whatever, once we get feeling good, let's just latch onto this like a leech and suck everything we can out of it and still do nothing, because we do need to balance it off with an action. The point of law of attraction for me, and how I understand it and how I want to share it, is to power up. That's the word that just kind of keeps coming to mind for us, is to really kind of absorb, especially, that's why I said the vibration aspect of it, to absorb and restore your power, just like a superhero in a way, to just kind of get to the point where you are just absorbing the energy. You know how when they would say sometimes with a negative person can walk into a room and suck the life out of the room, you need to be able to actually do that in a positive way, and in a way in terms of strengthening yourself with all of the various attributes, characteristics of source and of attracting and of vibration. And I kind of went over them, and I have them written down, so I just share. It's some of them kind of go together, and there's some overlap with them, and I'll be explaining that in some of these. And as I say, they'll be shorter, so sometimes it'll just specifically be that topic. Today also, as I said, I'm going to keep with the little sex thing, because I noticed that just kind of gets clicks, and I'm just starting out and stuff like that, but not to be misleading. If I put something down, then I'm going to talk about it. So today is Stop Fucking Fuckboys. So I will also get to that in a second after I find my source information that I wanted to share. Okay, so source is a combination of these characteristics, attributes. So it's you. It's all. I don't like, when they say an omni, because then we start going into, a whole nother thing where it crosses religious lines, where a lot of us, that is our foundation, but we want to start to also reclaim a lot of the language, because a lot of the language came from people who were giving us something that they weren't given to us as a gift. So in that sense, that's one of the reasons you want to try to clean up your narrative from and understand when it has been connecting it to things that have been programmed in you. Those things have been conditioned in you, and those things that have been you've been brainwashed about. So those are some of the reasons in terms of when you are rejecting, as I've said before, rejecting their narratives, rejecting their language, rejecting their systems. You're kind of doing all of that, and some of it you have to kind of just reestablish the language for yourself. In context is one of the things where we keep having that argument about, saying nigger, and people, well, not nigger, nigga. We know if you say nigger and you ain't black, even if you are black, it's a difference. But also in terms of, like even certain words, when we're talking, some people are comfortable with, calling bitch. That's one of the things on Javon's timeline where he gets a little back and forth with the women, but, and then some women aren't. I'm one of those. Don't call me just call me by my name. What's the problem? I have a name, use it, and that's another thing too. I always trying to think of these segues where we just have all, in the last, I would say this pretty much this generation, maybe one more generation removed, where we've had a lot more unique names. I'm from a family with just basic names. As I said, my niece is Jada, my nephew's Jackson, I'm Veronica, my mom's Julia. I ain't gonna put all my family names on here, but just regular names. But one of the interesting things about that in the context, of course, as always, because it is black and white a lot of times. I remember when I started working, my name is Veronica. And when I started working with white people, they literally would go, "Can I call you Ronnie?" I'm like, bitch, Veronica, I'm sorry, I'm about to go there. I don't curse often, but Veronica ain't even hard. And you want to give me your nickname like this is some Toby Kunta Kinte nonsense. So this is why I've always not had a problem with learn people's names. Like they said, if you can learn to say Schwarzenegger and Tchaikovsky and Shakespeare, whatever their names were that we learned from the beginning, Tolstoy, Bronner, all those types of names, then you can also learn, they can also learn your names as well. So Veronica ain't even hard. And they wanted to ask me if they could short my name and give me a nickname. I've never gone by Ronnie. I hate it, as a matter of fact, because of that. Everybody just called me by my name. Families have nicknames. I have a nickname in my family that I ain't sharing on here and things like that. But, we have our names, and whatever our names are, to make sure people use their names. You don't have to shorten it. I notice that also happens with a lot of foreign people when they're trying to assimilate. Look where that has got your ass. I ain't really feeling sorry for you. Like I said, I'm just talking to black people, but if I go there with that, y'all, like I said, it's either black or white. We know what side y'all tend to want to go on. So that's your ass. So that being said, don't get into these tricks of assimilation. Don't get into these tricks of acclimation. And what's the difference between assimilation and acclimation? Probably just the easiest thing in terms of acclimation is adjusting. You don't necessarily assimilate, but you adjust. And assimilating is, pretty much meaning that you are trying to do as much as you can to become a part of, which is all the stuff they want us to do and then still won't accept us. So, hopefully once you start to unbrainwash yourself, uncondition yourself, unprogram yourself, you'll recognize and realize that. Now, as I was saying, with regards to the source, it's you source. And these are the things when we talk about source and vibration and law of attraction, law of vibration, law of attraction is you, it's source, it's harmony, it's alignment, it's vibration, it's energy, it's frequency, it's momentum, it's power, and it's creation. It also involves the 6 senses, right? We primarily been taught about 5, and even why is that? Is that coincidental, or did they do that on purpose? And the thing about that is that the sense that we often forget, or the sense that we often get left out, is thought or think, right? Because it's see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and thought. See, I was just about to begin the sixth sense that they often because they don't want you thinking for yourself. So you begin to include the 6th sense, knowing that that the 6th sense is also about you thinking. And this is also the thing with what was that Javon did with the eye, or the Isis, Orisis? I forgot what the Eye of Horus, I think it is. I forget, but yeah, and the same thing about, you know, we not being able to interpret it because we have allowed other people to interpret it, so we kind of miss that as well. But the thought often gets left out of there because we're allowing other people to tell us and you know, what we can and cannot do and think and all of those types of things, whether we know it or not. You know, we have really given our permission and submitted our freedoms mentally, and that's the most important one. They took our physical bodies by force at one point, you know, but then it gotten a lot easier. And as much as this again is a gift, they're giving this internet, this social media, all of these things. Every time they give us something, it's not always a gift. So that's something to just keep in mind as well. So that's kind of what I at least wanted to start with the law of attraction. Yeah, I keep seeing a streak of light streak by, and believe it or not, I'm not seeing a gnat. So hopefully that's just a good sign of something. Usually it's a gnat, or unless I'm just not catching him with these fruit fly seasons, gnat or fruit fly, depending on what you call it. So just in terms of manifesting, again, just kind of manifesting on whatever Kim and Dina have shared as well. And then the manifestings that I've had, just kind of continuing to compound on top of them. Money, the $42,000, the minivan rental, and the first class ticket. These are just mine. And then, as I said, and I added on Dina and Kim's. They know what theirs are as well. And if you just want to add on it, what we're doing is co-creating, and this is kind of master manifestation as we power up to just kind of agree, as people would usually say in the church, touch and agree, but we just say co-create and manifesting what we want to manifest, putting it in our vortex or our boom boom room, which is what we call it based on working with Javon and the Bubbles and the Bears. A new car, Jada's graduation from college, Jackson's academics and athletics. And that was, he talking about that yesterday. And my mom was just telling me this morning that he got on another team. And, because his grades have kind of been going back and forth, but I guess he's taking it more serious because he does want to play and he's a good player. So hopefully I can get in his ear a little bit when I am home visiting them in June. So that will be just continuing to manifest that in him, and stressing some importance, and also letting him know that there's some support for him in the form of his auntie for sure, but also learning a little bit about this, maybe some form of the Bubbles and the Bears, but definitely the law of vibration and the law of attraction. And that time I saw was a flag going by, and I'm not going to be distracted by that. So yeah, so that new car there, and Malcolm's clarity on career, that was my other one as well. So I had those. So what will I be adding today? I'm going through a little something, and I don't know how much of it I want to share. That's the thing too, when you start going through this. When you have people to talk to, it's actually good to express it. I know that's my background, to kind of get it out and get some closure, and learning how to move on in spite of things that you cannot control. So, I'm going through some things, relationship wise, and I'm single, but you just have some things from the past come up, and those types of things. I don't want to be vague because I hopefully will help somebody here and things. But one of the things that I'm doing is I'm addressing it through meditation, through the law of attraction, and through the law of vibration. When sometimes things just past kind of pops up for one reason or another, and you just kind of end up having to deal with it again. And I had to deal with that when you speak to people. And understanding kind of what exactly it is that you want. What is your expectation? What is your outcome from this? And that's not gray hair. That is like soap or something. See how it is when you start critiquing yourself on these, so right now, I primarily I don't have any answers. I'm always just very open and receptive. And I want to be in that place with regards to relationships, to be open and receptive to whatever is ahead of me, whatever is in alignment in relationships with me always moving forward and not looking backwards. So that's kind of broad, but it's also clear for me, at least in the extent that I don't want to go back. I don't want to look back. I want to look forward. Now, does that mean that that is a possibility sometimes with people from your past? I remember a lot of people really it resonated with them when Javon first talked about the blue dot alignment, and he was saying sometimes, it's people you blue dot align with, and they, y'all are gone off in different directions and all those other things. If you got the chance, call them back, call them up, all of those types of things. And that's probably, there's some truth to that, but there is a wonderful thing that Abraham, I'm listening to on the audiobooks, because I don't know where my Vortex book is yet, but it'll be here eventually. But he said a very interesting thing where he said, it is impossible to control conditions that others have created. And that's the thing too, when we be like, but I thought, especially when you're trying to control everything that's outside of yourself, the other person, all of those types of things that you just have no control over. You cannot control what other people are going to think. You can't control, even your version of the story and their version of the story, all of those types of things that kind of come into play. If there is some things that you want without you trying to, it's whatever you want, as I said, in terms of the law of attraction. But I think also understanding that there are going to be things that if you are trying to manipulate, I'm almost going to say if you're trying to manipulate somebody else, but I think it's more so if you are trying to be somebody, have somebody think the way that you want them to think, without them having a good reason for them to change, without them having a willingness to accept the changes that are occurring, not aligned. As he was just saying, pretty much anytime you have an uneasy feeling, any type, you already know any of the negative emotions, then more than likely you are not aligned. So in that case, it's it's not something that it's something you might be trying to control that's not in alignment. So those are the things. Even with me, I'm kind of learning that as well. I've been on a particular path and I've been blessed with so many opportunities and doors opening for me. And a lot of times, it was definitely source working in my favor. As we used to, church and say, God is giving you favor and all those types of things. So, but things working in my favor to lead me in a particular direction. And we can see, and there's a lot of us who can do that, can see and look back and see how things have changed, and how things just happen for us, and how things were manifested. Then necessarily we might be talking about all this manifestation, but we didn't even know we wanted them. We didn't even know what that's the direction we were going in, and things just kind of fell in line to kind of help us in the best way possible. And that's something that we need to remember when we are manifesting, and when we are talking about vibration, and when we are talking about alignment. One of the things about frequency, right, when we're talking about getting a frequency, is just making sure your feelings are lined up with your making sure your feelings are lined up with your what it is that you have in your that's where the vibration comes in. The vibration is the feelings that are going to line up with what the things that you actually want to put in your boom boom room. And it has to be things that you can control. And I think that's the part in terms of if you're trying to sort of get other people to do what you want them to do, and it doesn't work out, and you're going, why? I'm a powerful manifester. Why isn't this working? It's because they are not willing in their mind to be on the same page with you. So no matter what you want, and you're trying to get somebody, be in a relationship with somebody who don't want to be in a relationship with you, and you doing all the right things, saying all the right things, if they are not on the same page, no matter what it is, relationships is just probably an easy thing. But even in something like what we're doing with the bubbles and the bears, if people, it's not going to speak to everybody, and it's also everybody is not going to be able to receive it. And it's not going to work for everybody in the sense of where they are in their thought process, what they're going to submit to. It's one of the things in terms of sometimes when Javon is getting frustrated and stuff like that, because he's saying people aren't listening. A lot of times it is just because you don't agree. And you just have to be, and it depends on where your mind strength is maybe as well, because a lot of, certainly I feel like the majority of the things that he says for me, they just don't resonate with me, but they roll off of me. Whereas I see, obviously there's been people, one person, I only think one person got kicked out, but people have kind of come and gone sometimes because it's just, they can't take his intensity or his passion or whatever you want to call it, in terms of how he presents himself and how he presents the lessons and so on and so forth. And he may chalk it up to not being blue dot aligned. And I'm kind of like, I don't think that that's always the case. I think that people will get what they need to get in the way that they'll need to get it, even if they kind of poke their head in this particular door, in this particular room with the bubbles and the bears. It might mean that they are, moving in a direction where law of attraction is something that's coming up for them. It's on their menu, their universal menu. And I think that that is the case too, as well. So they might not be, in terms of him saying blue dot line with Turner's Church and with the bubbles and the bear situation. So, and that's kind of what he's talking about. But I don't readily dismiss that people aren't necessarily on track to be somewhere. I remember years ago, sometimes whenever I would kind of meet somebody, a lot of times, and I just have that kind of good vibration. I'm going to say humbly, but whenever you meet somebody, and I always just be like, you are kind of, whatever it is, you kind of on track for something. And I always felt like I had to kind of just tell people that, because I just always felt like whenever, even if we briefly knew each other, I always, after our kind of brief interaction, I always saw them kind of going in a different direction where they once weren't, and in a good way. So sometimes just, vibrations kind of lining up in that way. That's when we're even talking about co-creating and manifesting. We have our, specifics and adding some material things onto those things, but also just understanding a lot of times that, it just can be a momentary thing. That's one of the reasons I liked when Javon did the analogy with the cars, and he was just saying we're on the road, and, there's green bubbles or green that turn into green cars that are also in your lane that are ahead of you and doing some things. And then there's these red bubbles in the other lane across that, maybe trying to skid in front of you and distract you. And they do, it's like one of the things in terms of learning about the vibration is that with the energy that's just around us, if you can imagine right now that there's this, and it is, I'm all energy as well, but just that there's this streak of energy across my head, and an aggressor, an invader just sticks their hand up and into your, into your energy. This is all my energy, and whatever invisible invader, aggressor, white people or whatever, they stick their hand up and then they disrupt the energy. If you've ever seen it, people have done graphics on and showing that kind of thing where you can see the hand, and then when they put the hand up and it, and there's a bunch of stars and lights and stuff, and it just distracts it. But the energy doesn't stop. It's just all kind of broken up and, in pieces and all this other stuff. But believe it or not, as you notice, it's also still moving past the hand. It's just now it's kind of right. Once you're on the other, you're a full person or whatever on this side. You got to get back to being a full person once you go through whatever that obstacle and challenge was. So that's the same thing in terms of that's the importance of understanding the whole energy aspect and powering up so that you can be stronger. And a lot of times you don't see as much when they also show that sometimes where, if the hand disrupts the energy, it just goes around it. Everything is just kind of going around it and not necessarily trying to go through it, which is sometimes what we tend to do as well. With some obstacles, you gotta kind of go around. That might be a longer way in terms of a metaphor and an analogy for life. It may mean that it takes you off track a little bit. And sometimes you can move the obstacle out of the way. There's so much force, or it gets tired and it moves out of the way, and you go through it. So there's a lot of different scenarios to that for you in terms of for an analogy for your life, and how we're dealing with vibration and energy and power and frequency, and most importantly, harmony is in there, because that's what has to everything kind of has to work together in a harmonious state for us to kind of feel better. But when we're feeling bad, it's just, it's easy for us to just go to the sunken place, thanks to Get Out movie. People are going to really, for a while, they're going to be unknowing that, willingly. And it was so funny how easily this white woman in the movie Get Out put, what's his name, Chris? I don't remember the main character put him in there so easily by talking about his mom. You know, let's talk about your mom. And obviously, and you know, some of the things, like they said, that wasn't seen, and they had all these people that wrote all these spoilers about the shit about the movie beforehand and things like that. And that was one of the things. How did she even have as much information on his mom? And obviously, he probably shared some of those intimate things with his girlfriend, his white girlfriend, who was her daughter. So just being able to kind of go to something that would cut him like a knife, you know, the death of his mom, and then be able to kind of penetrate, and that's usually what it is, you know, kind of really bore into your mind and so easily. That's why sometimes like I said, I don't let nobody, I don't do any hypnotists, and that's part of psychology, some people's psychology. I know people who have gone and done hypnotists, and I'm just like, you stupid. But that's just my opinion about that. I ain't letting nobody, you know, don't let we got enough mind fucking going on. So I just don't agree with letting nobody mess with your head. But people like to go to those shows. I live here in Vegas. We have literally probably 5, 6 hypnotist shows, various shows. You know, there's always one main popular person who does a hypnotist show, and then there's these little whatever, not amateur, but I guess amateur magician hypnotists, people who do all this stuff, and just random strangers coming and letting some random stranger put them under hypnosis. So, you know, when people ask me, do I want to go? Because, you know, sometimes you have friends who work in some capacity, and they give you comps, what's called comps, which is complimentary, whatever, hookups. And you know, for future reference, no, you ain't got to ask me, do I want to go to no hypnotist show? I don't want to go to no hypnotist show. I want to go to no hypnotist class. I ain't take no hypnotist class. When I took all my psychology classes, either that or I fell asleep if we had it in class and not hypnotized. Just like, nope, I'm not into no mind control, because we have enough issues as Black people, and I have always understood that. So if anything, we need to kind of unbrainwash, uncondition, and deprogram. So no, not willingly letting somebody do it because you think it will be fun. And that's some white people shit. Anyway, you know, I don't know how else to say it, but there's a lot of things I have, you know, when you start talking about white people, you're like, that is some white people shit. You know, and that's part of the problem in terms of, you know, you have no problem being mind fucked and allowing people and thinking that it's for this greater good, whatever they sell you, because it hasn't harmed you. The privilege is also you being oblivious, and that's not a good thing, but you don't know it because a lot of things aren't affecting you with your white privilege. I see now that they're doing the chips. They're sticking them into your, I guess, this little divot in your hand where they're putting the microchips in Australia. And people are just going along with it. And, you know, what Australia did to their version of the Native Americans, which is the Aborigines. So I don't give a damn about them white people either, in the sense of what all of these white people have kind of gone all over the place to do. But, you know, they're a conformist society, and they're predominantly a white society. But everything is fine because it's just primarily been them and the people that they tend to oppress, and they haven't had a big cluster of others come in. You know, they've just been able to kind of do what they did to the Aborigines when Britain sent over their worst, because that's how whites got to Australia. Britain sent over their worst criminals and all the other stuff that people don't usually know in history. And of course, they came over there and did their Columbus savagery, because that's what Columbus did. He did his savagery as well. When he got involved with people who were there and, you know, who had a spirit of hospitality. I do have to say that's been our issue. And that's another ironic thing with, you know, where we were living, and we just want to welcome people in, and we didn't have any reason to worry until, you know, these white people, these clear skin, I think they used to call them, because there was a time when they weren't saying black and white. It started when they started calling us black. Well, they started with Moors, if you look in the biblical sense, or they would call them dark. But that's actually what was the initial description of black people, was more or less like something like night. I got to look it up again, but I think it was either they started with night or they started with dark, but it wasn't a negative connotation to it because they were the most powerful people. But one of the things, you know, just kind of understanding that in terms of how we conform. And now I think the first time I brought that up was talking about the teachers in the schools. And particularly, this is probably one of the few issues where I had immediately had say something about black teachers, where they, and I, it's the system that you're kind of a part of. And what are you going to do if you, even if you claim you want to change things, you kind of become a part of the system that is, like I saw somebody wrote yesterday, it's not broken, it's fixed, as in the fix is in. And I think that that's kind of true with the school systems, especially now, and even more so now, where they have continued to decline. And then in terms of just trying to go along with their system, even when they, I'm just going off on a whole lot of stuff if I start going into this, but even when they just claim that they're trying to do things to improve the system, obviously we already know that they're not. So the best thing for us is really to stop with this whole school, do away with even the word school. I'm not saying obviously the kids shouldn't be in the learning mode and be learners instead of students. I think that they should. But again, as I just demonstrated, there needs to be a change in the language, and definitely doing away with school and pretty much anything that they have given us, because a lot of what they have given us has not been a gift. So that is all I have with that. Hello, Dina. I think that's Dina. Either way, I'm just giving a shout out for the viewer, but I'm assuming it's Dina. She didn't write me no note or anything. So make sure I'm on the main page. And okay. So the final thing I wanted to talk about is, as I said, sometimes I'll just go short, but the final thing I wanted to talk about is you don't have to forgive. And this is even when I was doing psychotherapy, and people always struggled with this, because a lot of times you just don't want to forgive, but you have been conditioned, most likely from your religious foundation, that you have to forgive. And I want to kind of give a different explanation to it. First and foremost, just drop that that religious foundation of you have to forgive. That's the first and easiest one. So why? And of course we need a why, because we're conditioned. So we need a why as to why we do not have to forgive. And I want to explain, are you scarred or are you wounded? And people often think, when they say, oh man, that incident that scarred me for life. That's wrong. You're still wounded. Wounded means it's an open wound. It has not healed. It's a wound. It's just like when they say put a gunshot. I had said it, and I had only heard one other person said it, but see how things get in the universe. Put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. When you are walking around wounded by something, you are still holding on to the wound. A scar, unfortunately, don't have a whole lot of scars, but I have one, if you can look here, that I got. It was actually a working out scar, but anyway, a scar is that, if you can see it in my beautiful brown skin, you can kind of see it when I show it at this angle. That's a scar. It heals. I remember how I got it, but it does not affect me in any way whatsoever. That's a scar. And that's when you say you scarred, now you need to understand that. See, I'm coming up with these 10, I'm blessing you, because somebody needed to hear that, because even me, I was like, let me get an analogy going for that. So stop saying scarred, and especially with, when you are hurt. You are still wounded, and are you willing to heal from the wound? It is not about the other person. That part is true, but the connotation that we have all of these beliefs under forgive, I have to still see them. Forgive, I have to talk to them. Forgive, a lot of those things. I'm not feeling like I forgive them, and maybe I don't forgive them. So all of the things that we wrestle with, that we don't have to wrestle with. Obviously, in terms of I'm done with that person, you got your one strike, whatever it is you did to me, I'm moving on from it. If you want to call it unforgiveness, or even just get that whole scenario of forgiveness out of the equation. Whatever this person did to you and whatever you decided to do next, in the context of next, is what it is. I moved on. You can say stuff like that. I'm done with that. I'm done with that person, or whatever. If you're still trying to get at them, then this is an ongoing something, or whatever it is, the ongoing thing of some sort. And it does not have to be forgiveness. But I really want to free people from this whole forgiveness kind of thing, and understanding that a lot of times from whatever type of hurt it is, especially if it's something like heartbreak, which is a good one, right? People sometimes, it takes you a long time to recover from a divorce or a betrayal or something in terms of a relationship. When I say heartbreak of some sort, and it can be a heartbreaks, obviously in different contexts. Somebody said something to you when you were 8 and you are now, 38. So that's the little girl or boy that was standing there at 8 and got that thing said or done to them, and you're 38. So you literally have had this little girl trailing you throughout your life and bringing her up. She's just, every once in a while you look back at that thing and she's just standing behind you waving. So it's those types of things that you have to understand, where, you can help her pack her bags and be like, go to your fun place, not your sunken place. You can leave. I got it now. I won't be looking back at you. So it's just kind of something to understand. And there's a lot of those words, again, that have kind of been clipped and pinned and stuck and taped to our minds about, and forgiveness is, I think, one of them that really people wrestle with, because you just don't want to. I know from therapeutic experiences that a lot of people wrestle with it because you don't want to forgive them. And that's the thing, you do not have to. I think I shared the story about, I said from now on, I'm going to change the names and not make them all stories, but I just have a lot of stories, but definitely of the woman who was being beat, had domestic violence, and then took her husband in to take care of him after he had a stroke. And I'm just like, you about to kill yourself, literally with a headache, or, and that's what she was, having headaches and palpitation. And that can lead to, when you do get cancers, it started somewhere else, but how it's kind of developed in our atmosphere and in our foods and all these other things that we have put in our bodies that have also managed to become carcinogens that have been managed to become cancerous. But a lot of times it also comes from those types of emotions, particularly negative emotions like anger, like fear, like worry, like doubt, not unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is not an emotion. It is an action. And that's the difference as well. So just kind of understanding that for people to get that, just get it out. A lot of times people go, oh, so you're not going to forget him? I don't have that. You just say, I ain't got that word in my vocabulary. I've moved on. I'm not thinking about him. All the type of things that are true, where people tried to talk you out of, because that is the truth. A lot of times you didn't have to do it the way they have to do it. It doesn't have to be some pretty bow put on these things, a lot of times, that somebody else conditioned you to forgive or to approach in a specific way. There's this woman, that's the final thing I'll say about this. She's she's popular on Facebook. I'm trying to remember her name. She's a Professor Patton, Stacy Patton is, I think, her last name. Hi, Deanne. I see your face. Yeah, hey. Hey. I see your face popping up. Yes, I can see you and hear you. Did you want to go black? You can.
No, hello. Oh my goodness.
It's good that you tried to.
Yes.
I see the face and I recognize. And look at that. I barely met you, but I even remembered your name. Is Deanna or Deanne?
Deanna.
Deanna.
Yes.
Yeah, I remembered your picture on Turner's Church. So welcome.
Thank you. I actually try to do the YouTube stream, and I can chat, but it just is like it's loading continuously.
Oh, is that what's happening? I see some people kind of flash on and off. And Dina, I don't know if you know Dina, she's on here. I'm assuming it's Dina because she's here every day, and she can't because of her phone. So and because of her phone, she also can't write in or chat at the same time while she's watching. So she manages to stay consistent.
So I figured, yeah. So what I had to do is I tried to click on the link, and it took me to a map. So I had to copy and paste that link into the browser, and then it took me here.
Yeah.
So if you just click on the link, it takes you to a map, and I was like, oh, that can't be right. So
I wonder why that's happening. Okay, I've got to check that. Thank you for telling me that. Are you talking about the link on the events page?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I stopped checking it probably the last 2 or 3 days. I used to check it and make sure that it worked, but I haven't. So maybe something is going on with that. I will have to check that. But thank you for the effort. I appreciate it.
So yes, sorry I'm late. Yeah, sorry I'm late, but I finally figured out how to work this. And so I just wanted to check in that way. Next week, I know what to do so I can check in.
Well, we're here I'm here for 21 days and we're on day 12. So actually 10 more days. So, 9 more days. So if you want to pop in, feel free. It's no pressure. And obviously there's still, the recordings are kind of left on my site now, I guess. I have a page, a channel or whatever they call it. So it'll be there as well. And as I said, I don't know if you know Dina, but she's listening as well because she's pretty consistent every day. So I'm going to assume, that's her, because I can always see the amount of viewers who are down at the bottom. So, but we were just kind of what we had been doing, and Javon's 21 days of horny ended yesterday. So, so we kind of finished with that, and I didn't watch it today. I said after we finished the 21 days, I would kind of be a little bit back and forth and up and down with it, but would be continuing to be commenting because I started this based on just talking about the bubbles and the bears and whatever people wanted to chat about. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was really just kind of talking in general just now because my background is in psychology. One of my backgrounds is in psychology, and just talking about forgiving and not that you don't have to forgive. And maybe it's a word a lot of times for people that, come from a religious foundation, but that maybe they want to kind of remove that word from their vocabulary, especially if it's something that's oppressive to you, and if it's something that brings you feelings that you're not comfortable with, because you really don't want to forgive, and it's not that because you don't have to forgive, and we have to get to those points,
right?
So, and I think, the final thing I was just going to say with that is when Javon said that his revenge was his highest bubble, and I think the first day he said it, I didn't get it, but I let it marinate. I thought about it and stuff. And then I was just like, well, okay, what are some of the emotions that come out of revenge? And I was like, being driven, being determined, being more confident, those types of things, taking action. So those are a lot of things. You might not want to use the word revenge, but a lot of things can come out of revenge. Like he's trying to have successes so that he can say to people who shunned him or whatever the case may be, well, see, when, you didn't help me out, look at me now kind of situation. And there isn't anything wrong with that. So.
Right. I totally agree. It's so funny that it just takes, that one person to make it come alive, and like it had that light bulb, like, oh, bling, bling, I've always been the forgiving, but still very hurtful. So yes, I say that I forgive you, but I'm crying, still hurt about, the things that you said or did to me. And I'm like, have I really, if I did, I wouldn't be so emotional. I would let it go. Right. And so now I'm learning that it's okay to say I don't forgive, but what I do is, when I heard him say revenge is my, my highest, I was like, revenge? But now I get it. Revenge comes in different forms. So for me, that's being successful in my business. That's doing A, B, and C that maybe someone didn't think I could do, or they shunned me or they didn't think my idea was good enough, and now I can prove, okay, well, I'm gonna show you. So this is my way to say, hey, basically F you, and yes.
And that's the thing. I think we have to adopt a new language for how we're doing things. I think you're getting a little bit of feedback because I'm hearing voices. But yeah, I think that, we don't have to take on a language a lot of times of society, a society that doesn't necessarily support us anyway. So, and we've been conditioned, particularly where a lot of people coming from a religious background and a religious foundation that also came from oppression. So all of those types of things. And then we're trying to rationalize it in our head and make sense of it. And it's just not working for us. And one of the things, especially, as I said, being in a kind of a psychotherapy, when you talk to people face to face and having a million stories, you really realize people wrestle with forgiveness because you don't need to use that word. You can say, I moved on, or I'm still hurt by this. And when I process it, I need to process it this way. It's a long sentence or a long paragraph of how you feel about it. It's not forgiveness. So stop using that word. For the most part, I had taken that word out of my vocabulary, and it wasn't any problem for me. But I know for some people, they struggle with it because it's all throughout, I don't even know if it's all throughout the Bible, but, it's in enough places where, that Bible. I say that,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
it's gotten people.
Yeah, that's true. Just because, the word forgiveness, it because you've used that word, you constantly think about, oh, have I truly forgiven? If I haven't, it's a sin, yada, yada, yada. So you're playing with yourself, you're going through this emotional whatever. If you don't use that word, like what I found is I don't even think about the issue, the problem, the person. If I don't say that I forgive them, I just move on and don't even think about it. And so, changing that vocabulary, I think is, definitely key.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think it also falls back to what is your action going to be? We say response versus react. And usually if you react right away, you're going to overreact. So you need to take the time and respond as opposed to it. And I think also another word that I think of is confrontation. A lot of times we're dealing with, especially if somebody has done something to harm us, it's about the confrontation that we do want to have or don't want to have. Or if something happened and you'd be like, man, I wish I had said this, or man, I wish I'd done that. That happens a ton of time, in terms of you didn't get a chance to say it or do it the way that you wished you had. So even all of those kind of things come into play with things that you can now no longer change, and you can only be here now in your moment. And what can you control, which is you and what you're going to think and what you're going to feel about a specific situation. And even when you're dealing with the person, when I said with confrontation, is one of those things where, when you get in front of them and you crying, like you said, or you being like, you hurt me and what you did, and you still can't control what the other person is going to think. Right. And that's the thing. When Javon is saying, when Chris, back in the day, when Chris would be like, well, sometimes you act like you don't care about my feelings. He's like, no, I don't care about your feelings, right. and that works for them. And that may not work for everybody in the sense where you do want somebody to be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more considerate. And they can be without you. That's one of the things I kind of agree with. They can be without you making it about what you thought your feelings meant. And in terms of when he was talking about the Cliff Huxtable analogy.
Right. I totally agree. Totally. Good lessons. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Yeah. So it's just it's just a learning experience. And I just felt like it was something that I wanted to put on here in terms of people agreeing. And I guess for me, I just share with when I shared a story on here a couple of videos ago now, a couple of chats ago, when I was talking about a woman who was a victim of abuse and serious domestic violence. And her ex-husband, she literally had to escape and leave and get away from him, and they got divorced or whatever. And maybe a year or two or something down the line, he had a stroke, and no one could take care of him. So because she had gotten involved and immersed in the church, I don't know whether somebody talked her into it. I forget the details now. I've told the story a couple of times, but but she ended up taking him into her home and taking care of him. And had a stroke after he beat the hell out of her and badly. And, and sometimes he would bring up something like, oh yeah, remember that, when we went to the jazz club, and she would say something like, oh yeah, I remember that night you threw me down the stairs and chipped two of my teeth, and he said something like, oh yeah, remember we were at the church cookout and I did up those ribs. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember, because you broke two of my ribs when I was talking too long to Deacon so-and-so. Right. And it was literally kind of dynamics, and and she was just like, this is freaking killing me because I hate this guy, I don't want to do it. But because she had that kind of foundation of forgive and do this godly thing for this man, and they were asking my advice as a therapist and a counselor kind of situation, and I was like, she needs to put his ass the hell out. Yes. You'll end up dying, because she was having headaches. At that time, she was just having headaches and palpitations and was just always angry. I'm like, you will develop cancer or some illness or give yourself a heart attack if you kind of continue to do something you don't want to do. And this was the epitome example of trying to pretend that you forgive when you don't forgive and you don't have any reason to forgive.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's like I'm not obligated to do that. Yeah.
People have to learn that, and it takes a while, but if you really just kind of make it up in your mind, because this is what you control, this is your mind, you need to kind of control this, and ultimately it's going to control your behavior, and it's going to control your actions and how you approach things. And also, one of the things about it in terms of law of attraction, those things will not be attracted to you anymore as well. More than likely, she wasn't going to attract any more abusive men, because she had learned lesson. It was a hard lesson to learn, and now you bring that spirit back into your house, and it's killing. It was, it's just so. And technically, I said she wasn't attracting, but maybe again she was. Maybe she wasn't finished with it, and you end up bringing back that same vibration into your environment to finish the job. Where you might have been thinking all along, oh, I got a situation, he could have killed me, and you bringing him back in to finish off the job. He can't do he can't do it to you physically, but now he's even in a worse place because he's in your mind, he's in your emotions. So
exactly. And that kind of also, because you had mentioned that maybe some people around her was talking to her about forgiving, and she was feeling guilty. So that kind of plays into changing your circle. Like, I've had to change my circle because I know that some of the things that I've done in the past, that I'm trying to get away from those same people. Not saying they would tell me to do it, but I'm like, we have some growing up to do. We can't do the same things that we did and expect, different results. And so I've had to change my circle. And for her, maybe she really didn't want to take care of him or whatever, but because people made her feel guilty or were putting things in her head, she was like, well, I have to, because if I don't, they might think yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just kind of makes me think of, Javon and Squad, and how we're all encouraging us to quit Craig mamaing ourselves and, get up off our asses. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's the thing when I said,
have to have people around you. Yeah.
And I agree with that. Thank you for that. That's a good, and especially when you said guilty, because I hadn't even thought of, that's another thing. That's not even, for me, those type of words, I've already gotten rid of those words. So it's good when you have somebody else to talk to, because I didn't even think guilty when I said all of that. I've said it before, maybe just randomly, but I already know that those are not the words that I think of. You need to kind of be putting yourself first. I think we did the analogy. I think he did it as well, Javon, when he said, put your oxygen mask on. And I keep saying that, put yours on first before you can help somebody else on the plane. When the oxygen mask drops down, you really do have to kind of put yourself first, no matter what the circumstances is, even if you have kids, even if you have a spouse, because you're not going to be your best self if you're not putting yourself first. And in those types of situations, as you said, in terms of her having other people around her that weren't in her best interest, it's true, and the church is really good for that, as a lot of people can attest to, telling you, a lot of what you kind of need to do when everybody is a hot mess.
Right. In the church. Exactly. You're right. Yeah.
It's I could go there for days, but I won't. I'm trying.
Yeah, like that's a whole conversation for another day.
I'm gonna go there, but I'm just like, all right, not yet. Sometimes even once you even start talking about church and church folks, because your family is full of church and church folks, and your family is a hot mess. So it's one of those things. You're just like, I don't even know where to start. So
that's yes.
But yeah, but that, these are the things in terms of where Javon has come in really handy, with just a lot of direct, non-conventional, unfiltered analogies of things. And it's actually in that sense, as I said, particularly with Black people, because we already know this is what's going on in our communities. This is sometimes how we talk to each other, where it is a lot more raw and unfiltered and unpolished. And, and those types of things. It doesn't mean that we're less intelligent. And a lot of times he said that even when he's getting on us and cursing us out and all those types of things, it is a situation where we have dealt with scenarios, sometimes because we're conforming to society, a society that doesn't accept us and is never going to accept us, but also in terms of how we pretend even with each other when we know better. A lot of times with our own people, we know when we're full of it and when we're doing things kind of to go along, to get along as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And you know what? And the lessons, him, the way he talks, that doesn't even bother me. Like that part, I tune it out because I'm so in tune with trying to get what I need to get out of the lesson. Like I don't even realize. And so for someone new coming in, I kind of can see where they're like, oh, the cussing, but I'm like, if you really just focus on the lesson, that's not even, you won't even notice. You won't even notice. So, but everyone's not there yet, and that's okay.
Yeah,
but I think have to realize.
Good, because I talked a lot.
I just have to realize that I can't save everybody, and I'm doing this for me. So until I do this for me, like he had mentioned in one lesson, like being selfish. So right now I'm being selfish. I'm getting out of the lessons what I need to get out of it, and I can't help my brother, my sister until I do for me. So right now I'm on some selfish. If you don't get it, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like that's just where I'm at. And so I've learned how to kind of tune that out and just focus on what I need to focus on every day when he goes live. So
I agree with that. I think my first comments, and I haven't commented a lot at all. Most I've done is like, put up the blue dots or, those types of things, say good morning. And when we were doing the word, I would add my word in. But in terms of just having general comments, but that's the thing. I was just like, look, he said, if he ain't talking to you, he ain't talking to you kind of situation. Well, those are a lot of situations as well. And, if you're trying to save yourself, if you're trying to save your family, there may be some nuggets in here and you might have to mind for them, because there's some classes where I just been like, get to the lesson, man, come on already. But there are other times where, you do have to you're there picking out the nuggets here and there that he's laying down. And it might be just something you need. It might be that particular thing. And especially somebody who's speaking to you in a way that you're not just conveying it to you, but something that you can convey to other people you love and care about, other Black people specifically that you love and care about, So,
yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
So that is all I got. I don't know if you got anything else.
I don't. I'm just happy I was able to figure it out. And now I know what to do for next time. So yeah.
Well, show up anytime. I'm here. I will be here faithfully, definitely for the 21 days. And then I was thinking today that I'll probably try to do like a weekly chat. If people just feel like they want to talk to somebody, I'll be coming on at least once a week to say, hey, anybody want to talk about anything? I'm gonna be on such and such day at such and such time. So I'm here. And you're welcome. And I thank you for showing up today and supporting.
No problem. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And bye.
All right.